Right now, we are basically remodeling our master bathroom and we're doing all the work ourselves. So I've been painting today and I didn't have the strength to even try to make myself more presentable. So I apologize, but I'm just going to go ahead and do your lecture video as is. So, um, for this week, we're continuing on with the theme that we kind of started last week, which is taking control of college and life. And, last week you were reading over some things that had to do with like making a budget, some of the financial aid information. And then this week, we're going to be talking more about some things that you can do to help yourself within the classroom. So, for example, you're going to have a section here that you're going to be reading about taking notes because there are different forms of note taking. And a lot of people have basically come up with their own versions of note taking. Some of you may have already taken classes where you were taught how to take notes in a specific way, but a lot of people haven't. And so we always go over this. We've been doing this pretty much since I've been teaching this class because there are some times that there are different ways that you can take notes that may be more beneficial to you, especially now that you know a little bit more about your specific learning style and some of the ways that you prefer to learn, or I should say the way that your brain prefers to learn. And you may be able to incorporate a few other little techniques in your note taking, which may actually help you in the long run because it might help you be able to retain information better, take better notes, take more thorough notes. And a lot of people don't realize that when you take your notes, even if you don't feel like you're really doing anything with them, because some people will take notes in class and then they kind of never really look at them again, but it's still actually beneficial to you, even if that's what you do, because just the physical act of writing down and taking notes is just another way for your brain to sort of take that information in and remember it. So if you're reading a textbook, for example, and you're just reading the words, in the textbook, you might retain some of what you're reading, especially if it's interesting. But, let's face it, most of the time, a lot of the stuff that we have to read for college is not always the most interesting thing to us personally. And, you might be reading through your textbook and you'll retain a little bit of the information, but you may not actually remember a lot of it. So I always suggest to students, I'm like, well, why don't you try taking notes while you read? Because especially if it's a topic or a subject that's really hard for you or it's difficult to grasp all of the concepts, why don't you try taking notes while you're reading? And so that way you're actually physically doing something while you're reading. Because if you tend to be one of those people that'll start reading and then you kind of realize that you've drifted off somewhere else and you're not even really comprehending what it is that you're reading anymore because you've kind of let your mind wander. I've done that a lot. I always just say, hey, try writing down notes, try to take down whatever, like if you're reading the paragraph, try writing down whatever the main idea, the main point is of that paragraph. And if there's any kind of supporting evidence, write that down on notebook paper. And just that physical act of kind of writing it down, it's going to help your brain remember it because you're physically thinking about making yourself have to look for information in what you're reading, write it down. And then what kind of comes of that is that later on, if you, let's say you have to study that subject and you don't remember a lot of the topics that you read from the textbook, you can actually refer back to the notes that you took. And that's really helpful. And that was something that I really honestly wish somebody would have suggested to me when I was in college, because I never did that when I was reading. I mean, I would take notes when I was in class, but when I was reading out of my textbooks, I used to be the highlighter queen. I would highlight everything. And it really didn't help me. That wasn't helpful for me personally. It was helpful in a way. I guess I could go back to a chapter and see stuff that I'd highlighted, but I really don't feel like it benefited me a whole lot. And I think for me personally, it would have been much more beneficial if I would have been taking notes as I was reading my textbook, because then I would actually physically be doing something. I would have to be making myself pay attention to main points and supporting evidence and writing it down. And then later on, I would have been able to just review my notes when I had to study for my test rather than necessarily having to reread a whole entire chapter, which I have done before because I forgot a lot of the information and I had to go back and read it all again. So anyway, back to the whole topic of different styles of note taking. When you do this reading, you're going to see that there's going to be, I do believe there's a PowerPoint in there, and there's some videos that when you're clicking on and you're doing the reading, there's going to be a lot more information within the reading. And use that information whenever you have to come down here and answer the activity for taking notes and doing the reflection and discussion post. So make sure you're actually taking information that you see from the reading, because that's going to be what I'm going to be looking for. And then you're going to have a section to read over about mastering memory, because there are also techniques that you can use that can help you retain information better. And some of you know different techniques that work for you, but you may discover some others that you've never thought of before. And then there's a section over preparing for tests, because there are different ways that you could also help yourself. Like if you have a really difficult test coming up, there's things you can do before the test that can help you prepare for it. There are specific things that you can do while you're taking the tests that could also help you benefit and help you do better on your tests. And then there's also some information about things that you could do after the test is over that could still help benefit you, because let's face it, just because you finish the test, it doesn't mean necessarily that everything's over. Because if it's your first big exam in that class, but you still have another 8 months of the 8 months, if you have another 8 weeks of this class left, let's say it's a midterm exam, after you take your midterm exam, you're going to get feedback from your professor. You're going to see how you did, first of all, and you're going to be able to see what kind of questions you missed. Did you miss more multiple choice questions? Did you miss more essay questions? Did you miss more of like the true false type questions? And it's giving you information if you're doing something with that test after you get your results back. There's ways that you can help yourself, because if you notice a trend, like let's say, for example, that you missed mostly multiple choice questions, those are the ones that you missed the most, that's giving you some information about maybe changing the way that you're maybe doing a study technique, or trying harder to do some practice tests or things like that, where you're actually giving yourself multiple choice questions to practice them more, to prepare yourself better for the next test that you have to take. So that's kind of what this section is talking about. And then you're going to use the information from your reading to answer this activity here for preparing for tests. And then you're going to have a couple more readings here. You have strategizing for different kind of exam formats. And that's really important, because there are different ways that you can prepare yourself even better depending on what type of exam it will be, because some classes might have a mixed method where you have multiple choice, true, false, essay. You may be in a class that's asking you to do a complete essay question, and that is what your test is. And then you may have other classes that have a different format. You might even have a hands-on approach, depending on the type of class, where you actually have to demonstrate something in order to get your grade for that exam. So this is a good little section here to go over and read through that. And then for those of you that maybe potentially have had some issues with being successful in your math classes, this right here is a PowerPoint that has some really good information about how to be successful in math and some strategies there. So I would highly recommend clicking on that and going through the PowerPoint to get some of that information. And then of course we have the health and wellness bonus points down here that you can complete this week if you would like. Please, just as a reminder, make sure that whatever app it is that you're using, I need to be able to see a recorded workout. I need to see the exercise minutes and the date. So I don't need to see steps. I need to see the actual exercise minutes. I still have a few people that are submitting some of like their Fitbit activity. I can't talk tonight. Their Fitbit activity that maybe it'll only show steps. Sometimes they still aren't showing the date. So I need to be able to see that information. I need to see that it is a recorded workout, not a compilation of all of the minutes that you've done throughout the entire day. I need to see that it was an actual 30-minute workout that was recorded. So just a reminder there, so you can continue on for the rest of the semester if you're getting some bonus points for that. And other than that, that is pretty much it for this week. If you have any questions or anything, just shoot me an email and we can talk about it. So hopefully I didn't trip up in my talking too much in this and confused everybody even further, but I can't talk tonight for some reason. So, all right. Well, I will see you all next week when we start week 12, and have a good week.